Sew with Monty. Today I want to show you how to drape a knit torso block. And the first thing I have done is I've pressed my fabric so that it's got all the stretching and warping out of it. It still has some crinkles, but it's nice and flat. And then I've measured my form across the front bodice and added 2 inches to the fullest part, the chest and the hips, which turned out to be 22 inches. My form is 19, I actually added 3 inches, so I've got 22-inch panel here. And then in the dead center of the panel, I've drawn one line. This is going to keep me straight. This is what is going to be the center front of my panel. I'll do the same thing on the back when I get ready to do that. I've come down approximately 10 inches from the top of my panel and I've drawn a horizontal line, and then 18 inches down I've drawn another one. This keeps me from getting my knit warped as I'm starting to drape, so that I keep these lines parallel with the floor and will be balanced from the floor up when we finish the drape. I want to talk to you a little bit about the knit itself. When you're selecting a knit to work with, either draping or even if you're ready to make a garment, you want to look for certain things. First thing you want to look for is the stretch factor. Now on a knit, it's hard to see in this video, but on the knit there are ribs. And the ribs should run vertical on the body. So when you're pulling on it, even though it might stretch both ways, be a 4-way stretch, you want to make sure that the ribs are what runs vertical on the body. I don't know if the light can see that. That's very important. Secondly, what you want to look for is you want to be able to take your knit, and let's say what I like to do if I'm in the store is I hold it between my index finger and my thumb, and I do this before I ever purchase it, and then I try to grab about 5 to 6 inches here and then see if I can stretch it, how far it will stretch out. See if it will double its length. See, this one pretty much doubles its length, which makes it 100% stretch factor. Now if I release it, does it go back to where it was? See, you want to make sure that it goes back and doesn't stay blown out or halfway blown out here. So this knit has a good recovery and a good stretch factor. Other things you want to look for is how the texture looks after you've done this. If it's puffed and what they call orange peel, kind of stretched out like little stretch marks on it, then you've got to be careful of that. Something's going on with it. It could be a multitude of things. But you don't want it to orange peel here where it's got little blisters. It looks like it's been blistered. And you also want to make sure that it's the type of fabric that doesn't run. You don't want to pull it here along the edge, and if it starts running this way, that's another thing you might want to have a second thought about purchasing it. So those are things you want to look for when you're actually purchasing a knit. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this panel and we're going to go to the form, and I'm going to show you how to start draping it. So now we have our muslin, our knit block, drape block, pinned to the form. And what I've done is I've pinned the center front first, right down through here, putting the pins in crisscross to hold it so when I pull on each side, the tension doesn't pull my pins out. Note the lines. I'm trying to keep them relatively straight, horizontal across the body so that I don't have issues. Now, they may get off a little bit, but we're going to come back and do an Hbl line to get an accurate crosswise line on this drape. But you want to kind of keep these lines basically in the horizontal area, and don't let them tip radically down or upward so that your fabric doesn't get warped. Now on this side, I've went ahead and I've marked the side seam. So let me put the pins back here. I've marked the side seams, and I've marked my underarm point and my armhole. So I'm just going to kind of put this back here so you can kind of see. And when I did this on this side, I ended up with a little bit of ease in the underarm. Now, this is optional. You can have or not have this ease. On the other side, when I draped the other side, I liked the outcome better. It was a little cleaner. So I think I'm going to choose the other side as my final block, which you do. You're going to drape this entire body, but you're going to select the side you think is the preferred side for your block. So I'm going to put an X over here because I don't want to use this, and I'm going to come back because this is much smoother and the lines are nice and parallel, and I'm going to go ahead and finish this off. So I'm going to draw in my neckline. Note that I've clipped my neck so it would lay flat. I cut the corner off and clipped it. And now I'm going to mark my shoulder seam. Now when you do this drape, you're going to pull sideways first, and then sometimes you have to move up this way to get the shoulder clean after you've trimmed away. So we may have to readjust this in just a moment. Now along this armhole, I want to draw right along the crest of this, not along the plate. This is too small. I want to come up just a little bit higher along the crest, and you can kind of feel that on your form. When you get to the bottom of the plate, right here, you want to come down 1 inch below, and that's going to be the base of your armhole. And then you just shape it off so that you have a nice round shape there. Now once you have this, you can come on down the side seam. We've got a little pull there. I'm going to find my side seam. Now on your form, because your side seam's raised, you can etch it off by using the edge of your chalk and just draw it in like this. And that way you'll have it in here. I'm going between the pins. I don't want to go where the pins are because a lot of times that's a stress pull, but when I take it off I can blend it out to where it needs to be. So I don't really pay attention to where the actual pins are. So now we're going to trim this off, and we're going to do the back and see how we do there. So I'm just getting rid of all of this, and then I'm going to take the back panel, which is temporarily pinned to the back of the form, and I'm going to start draping with that. Now I'm just cutting it about a 1/2 inch or so away from my actual seam so I can see what I actually have here. So I just want to, plus I want to have enough to pin my back to my front when I'm all done, because that's the final test of all this. So let's just take a look at the armhole and then we'll move to the back. So yes, I like this armhole much better. See how much cleaner it's laying here than this armhole. For whatever reason, I couldn't get that out of there, and it's a little bit more. It's okay to have a little bit of that, but that's a little too much. So let's spin it around. I've got the back pinned in the center back right here. So now I'm just going to pull gently, first horizontally. Now I don't want to overpin, and another thing I want to do is roll this out of my way. I'm going to just take the front and just roll it back out of the way. Put the pins in the neck or put them out of the way. Put a couple here and just hold it on the form. And that way they don't interfere with me draping the side seam of my back. And I'll do the same on the other side when I get there. So I'm going to start by making sure my lines stay horizontal. You need to pin a little bit farther down here. Make sure I've got the lower back pinned down, center back. And I might put another couple pins right in this section here, because you don't want to pull this off the line. This line needs to stay center back, so you want to keep your pull nice and clean. And when I do this, and my form floats, so I have to kind of use my foot. But I want to pull it just gently, and then keep my line horizontal as best I can, and start pinning my side seam. So first you do all the horizontal draping, and then we'll come back and we'll do up the shoulders by pulling up on the shoulder. So this line, I want to try to keep it as horizontal as possible while I'm draping, and then put a mid pin in on the side seam. And then down here, same thing. I want to keep my back nice and horizontal here. Let's turn her around. There we go. So we're going to do it right here, and I just want to pull it gently. I don't want to pull it till I get stress. Just gentle like that. You don't want to pull your knit till you've stressed it out. If you're seeing stress in your fabric while you're doing this and you're pulling it too tight, you want to just be gentle with it, and just enough to make it mold to the body and no more. Don't get it so tight that you end up stressing out your fabric or getting big loops around your pin. Okay, little loops okay, big loops not so good. So let's go over to the other side. We're going to do the same thing over here. So I want to pull this out of the way and just put some pins in here to hold it temporarily. And then all my other pins I'm going to use to drape the back with. One down my sleeve. There we go. And there. And at the shoulder, the same thing. I'm going to just peel it back out of the way. Now I'm going to start here. I'm going to go horizontal across the back like this. And I want to put my pin in right here. Let me pull this over a little bit farther so you can see. So I'm smoothing out the back, and I'm just working with it almost like it's a thin layer of clay. You're just kind of molding it. And you want to just sort of mold it in shape, making sure you don't over pin or over pull. So right here, again, keeping that line. I've got this line. See how I'm getting this drag line right here? That's telling me that I've got my horizontal line askew. So I want to push up on it a little bit and put it back in there so that it's balanced to the waist. It's the same distance from the waist all the way through. And that's what those lines are for. They don't necessarily have to line up with specific landmark on your form, like the apex or anything, but you do want them to be horizontal as best as possible while you're draping. So against the pull, I put my pins in against the pull so they don't pull out when I'm draping. So if I'm pulling this way, I put the pins in the opposite direction. So now I have my back draped. The next thing is I'm going to mark all my seams and pin it together. Now right here where it's starting to kind of buck there, I'm just going to clip the waistline, and I'm going to come up here and do my shoulder. Now when I do my shoulder, I want to smooth it up like this, keeping this line straight, but keep it nice and smooth and clean, like that. And then I pin my high point shoulder, which is right at the base of the neck, and the shoulder seam, very important place to pin. And then I want to pin my shoulder tip, my shoulder point right out here. And again, I'm going to go ahead on both sides and draw in my neckline and my armhole and trim it back. So high point shoulder here, shoulder point out here. It's actually fun to work with knits. Just don't get too aggressive and pull them too tight. See how nice and smooth this is laying? So we're going to mark everything, and then we're going to trim. And the next step will be, we're going to put the back to the front. We're going to actually pin on our marked lines so that the pins are not in the form anymore. This will be our acid test to say, hey, is this right? Is the fit right? Because we're not depending on putting pins in the form to make it look nice anymore. So I'm going to rub off the side seam here, just etch it out where that big side seam is, and do the same over here. I'm going to come over here and draw in my other side of my neck. Now if you do both sides, it's a good idea because then you have sides to choose from. Once you get all your pins in here, get them pinned together, you can go, oh, I like this side much better. And you have a choice. It's sort of like draping two garments in one. When you make your pattern, you're only going to use one side. Sometimes you might want to use the best of both. You might want to fold them over when you get ready to do your pattern, and when I show you how to do that, I'll show you what I'm talking about. And then say, well, I like the armhole on this one, but I like the side seam on that one, so you can combine the two. Now once we have this all done, I'm going to come back and trim off the extra around the armhole and the shoulder. And then I'm going to pin my side seams together and my shoulder seams together. So let me trim this up and I'll pin it together, and then I'll show you the next step. So now I have the side seams pinned together, the shoulder seams pinned together, and no pins are in the form itself. I've taken all the pins out of the center, front, and back. So now it's fitting just like a regular garment would. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to do an Hbl line. I'm still liking this side better. This arm still has too much in there, a little too much. And instead of trying to work this out, I'm just going to make this my preferred side and make my pattern off of that side mostly. So now I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to find a point. Any point on your rule is fine. I'm going to use 6, and I'm going to put a dotted line in here. I move my form and not my rule. Reason being, the floor could be crooked, and if you start moving your ruler, you could get it angled like this. So if you're doing this on a person or on your form, turn your form or your person to your ruler. That goes for any hem you might do, or anything else where you need a horizontal balance line to the form. And just be careful if yours is suspended from the neck that you don't get it too, you don't lean your form in or out. You gotta be gentle. So this little blue dotted line will represent my horizontal balance line when I begin to make my pattern. Now the next part of this is I'm going to come back and assess the fit and make sure my seams are where they should be. This seam's falling a little bit forward here at the arm's eye, right at the shoulder point. So I'm going to adjust my pin so that my shoulder seam is in line with the form shoulder seam. Now I'm going to just dash in a line where my pins are, making sure I capture high point shoulder here. And I've got it a little bit off in the front, but that's okay. That's what making the pattern is going to be, to correct that. See how I'm off a little bit here in the front? And that happens sometimes. I've got it a little bit lower here too. So I'm going to kind of close that up as well. This is my good side. And then I'm going to do my armhole, making sure that it stayed put. Now right in here, I think I'm going to scoop it out a little bit more. Shoulder point looks good, and the same in the front. I'm going to scoop it out a little bit at the upper armhole and then come back in. So it's a good idea to use a fabric marker or a different marker to do your final markings so that you have your line accurate. And the chalk sometimes isn't your final line. You don't necessarily mark it when you have it pinned to the form because that's not an accurate fit. If it's pinned to the form, then it's being influenced by the pins that are in the form. So there you have it. I have my front, my back drape, my Hbl line. I'm liking this side, so I'm going to check this one too. And this is where we go back to the table and I show you how to put it on paper. So I have my drape off of the form, and I've taken the side that I'm not preferring on my front, and I've pinned, keeping the center line right on the fold, I've pinned the two together. Now I'm going to flip it over and see the difference between the side I don't prefer and the side I do prefer. So as you can see, the hip is quite a ways inside here, as is the waist. The bust is a little bit outside, as you can see here. So what I want to do is come back and look at it and make any changes I might want to make based on this information. Now, things I'm seeing here, I definitely like the neck on the side I've chosen because this neck is going out too far. I want my high point shoulder closer here. Definitely like the armhole of the side I've chosen. It's got a better scoop and it's a little more sloped in the shoulder so that it's giving me a tighter fit around the armhole. Along the side here, there are things I might want to change. I might want to ease out the bust just a little bit here. It goes back on. Maybe take the waist in a tiny bit here and let out the hip right here a little bit so that they're more parallel. So I will do this on both sides. I'm going to make new marks, corrected marks with a different color of marker, and do the same on the back, and then I'm going to show you how to transfer it to paper.